When we're looking at...
Jesus said, "Man cannot live on bread alone, but from every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." You're listening to Daily Truth.
Utilizing the rhetoric of Christ and some of the apostles, I might add, and some of the prophets like Elijah, right? Perhaps your God is using the toilet right now, maybe he'll be back in a little bit, right? That language is in the scripture. But when we're looking to use that language and to use it lawfully, rightly, morally, one thing that we should ask is the language itself. We need to weigh that with a biblical worldview, with a biblical standard. But then the next thing is this, not just what is being said and not just how it's being said, but this is one category that Christians often never even consider. And it's who is it being said to? Who's it being said to? A lot of times we just operate underneath this assumption that you can never say that. There's not one scenario that ever morally justifies the use of this point made in this way, right? So you're considering 2 out of 3 important categories. What and how. What is being said? How is it being said? And I suggest, brothers and sisters, that there's an immensely significant third category, which is what is being said, how is it being said, but also who is it being said to. Notice Jesus, he never aims the crosshairs of his sarcasm, of his mocking language at an old widowed woman who's poor and starving. It's almost as, I think that third category seems to be the most weighty category, the who. Who's the audience? I think that's the weightiest category that you could measure by just simply looking at the life of Jesus. It seems as though the major category, whenever we see Jesus using a serrated edge, a sharp tongue, it is almost always boils down to not even what he's saying or how he's saying it, but who he's saying it to. If they're the leaders of the day oppressing the people of God, then Jesus has no qualms about telling them that they're dumb. One final thing. I like Amy Kraft used this analogy. I thought it was great. Her and my wife were talking. We were all talking about kids. And okay, but what about with our kids? Because we have certain rules. There are certain words that Olive and Ruth and Eleanor are not allowed to say. Oh, you looked up, huh? Olive and Ruth and Eleanor are not allowed to say certain words. But I've noticed that at first, if I wasn't careful, I could implicitly just say, you're not allowed to use this word because it's a bad word. The problem with that argument, even as we're disciplining and training and teaching our children, is what do you do when you tell your kid they can't use a word because it's a bad word, but then one day they read the Bible and see Jesus using it? Right? So what we've done instead is we've started saying there are certain words that it's not a bad word, but it's a sharp word. That words are like knives. Knives are not inherently immoral. You're allowed to have knives in your home. But our 3-year-old doesn't use a knife. Right? We're not saying knives are bad. We're not banning knives. Same with guns. Right? We're not banning guns. No, we're saying, no, there's a place for this. It's sharp, sure. But sharp doesn't make it bad. Because sometimes you need something sharp. Sometimes you need a knife. Sometimes you need a gun. But that's kind of the fourth category is what's being said, how's it being said, who's it being said to, but then also who's saying it. So the audience that you're speaking to, but also who are you? And I would again suggest if the who, in regards to who's using the language, who's saying the sharp words, if the who is a 14-year-old teenager and the who they're saying it to is their mom and dad, it could literally be a quotation of the words of Jesus and be sin. You see, so weighing these kinds of things matters.